All right, this is a review of Godfather of Harlem, Season 4, Episode 2, entitled Country Boy. And it's called Country Boy because this is the nickname that Bumpy Johnson gave Frank Lucas. Well, he called him Country for short. Anyway, in this episode, we're introduced to Frank Lucas as he gets off of that bus from North Carolina. And during his intro, we get to experience New York through his perspective. As soon as he steps off the bus, he's greeted by a hooker. And then he's also greeted by somebody that wants to sell him jewelry. It really, the scene really takes you there to New York during those times. And as he's walking down that street, he encounters a three-card Monte dealer. And the three-card Monte dealer tries to get friendly with him, but Frank isn't having that because, them three-card Monte guys, they always try to size a person up their mark just to see who they are, what they're made of, and how much money they can get out of them. And it was no different with this guy and Frank Lucas because he was probably thinking, well, I could get an easy payday from this country bumpkin. And that's what he assumed that Frank Lucas was and whatnot. And, Frank was a bit hesitant, but he put his money on the counter. And the dude was like, yeah, this is for the lady, for the lady. And the card that Frank was supposed to be looking for was the Queen of Hearts, but he ended up getting the Queen of Spades. So he lost. And we go to the next scene. And in the next scene, the three-card Monte dealer is with one of his partners, and they're counting the take for the day and whatnot, and they plan on going to the restaurant. Little did they know that Frank Lucas was watching them. He got the drop on one of the guys, and then he gets to and then he approaches the three-card Monte dealer that ripped him off for his money with his blade. The dude was like, yo, I got your money right here. And Frank takes the money and slices the dude's hand and is like, well, you're going to have to learn how to move them cards one-handed now. And Frank kneels over and introduces his name to the three-card Monte dealer. He's like, my name is Frank Lucas. And the guy's like, ah! And that's how the episode starts, man. If you're going to, this was a great intro to an episode and to a character. I really like this. So in the episode, as we follow Frank Lucas's arc, he gets a place to stay, presumably with the money that he's stolen from the three-card Monte dealer. But the landlord discovers that he's a little bit short of the money. Frank Lucas assures him that he's good for it. The landlord says, you better. He walks out and whatnot. Then we learn that Frank Lucas, he isn't about getting a legit job. So in order to get his paper, he was robbing people that were coming outside of the Geechee, which attracts the attention of Chance and Pettigrew, who assume that Chin Gigante was behind it. But as we learn, it's not Chin Gigante because Chance catches up to Frank. They take him and beat him up, rough him up. And they bring him to Bumpy, and Bumpy questions him and everything. And Frank is like, I finally get to meet the man himself. And Bumpy's like, you know me? And Frank is like, of course, man. You a legend back in, the Kakalakis and whatnot. So apparently Bumpy's name rings out in his home state of South Carolina. But but from Frank's lips, Frank is from North Carolina. So yeah, his fame extends beyond Harlem. It goes back to his home state and whatnot. Because Bumpy's from South Carolina, Frank is from North Carolina. And I did like the interaction between those two. And Frank says, I never heard of Chin Gigante or Joe Colombo. And Frank offers his services to Bumpy. He's talking about if you have any pigs that need slaughtering and whatnot, because he worked in the slaughterhouse and all that other stuff. But so far, Bumpy really isn't impressed with Frank, and he tells Chance and Pettigrew to get him out of his sight and whatnot. Later on, they catch up to him at his place, and they choose him for a job because during this episode and whatnot, Bumpy is pretty much locking horns with Chin because in the previous episode he turned down Chin's proposal for him to team up with him for Bumpy's new venture, which is opening up a club called Club St. Clair and whatnot. That's going to be the name of Bumpy's new venture. And Bumpy wants to keep it entirely black owned, and Vincent balks at that. He wants in on that new business venture. But Bumpy is, headstrong about it and stands firm that he doesn't want no five family involvement in his new business. He wants this to be completely black owned and partner free. And we're going to see how this goes from here. But yeah, Bumpy and Vincent are bumping heads and whatnot. And during this episode we get to see Stella, and Bumpy finds out how much has Stella changed since the last time that they encountered one another, because Stella seems to have her father's ear. And Stella approaches Bumpy later and talks about, a plan that she has and whatnot. And this is where Frank Lucas enters the picture. Bumpy decides to, he wants to test the young Frank Lucas out. And he has Frank rob a truck that contains the shipment to the five families, because Vincent is now in charge of the shipment and whatnot. So Frank robs him. One of the people that's driving the truck, his name is Pino. He's the underboss of the Genovese crime family. He's in charge of driving the trucks that contain the shipments. And Frank robs him. He takes the shipment. The guy's like, well, you don't know who you're robbing from. And the young Frank Lucas doesn't care. He gets those 2 bags. He locks the Chin's people inside the truck and whatnot, and gets the guns and whatnot. And he's enamored by the cannolis and everything. I like that scene. And he brings those bricks back to Bumpy's men, and Bumpy's men look, and it's like he got the whole thing. And Frank says something wise to them, and Chance looks at him and is like, get the fuck out of here. And I don't know. I think as episodes go on that Chance is going to be locking horns with Frank Lucas. And but I don't think Pettigrew is, because I think, because Pettigrew said, I don't really trust him. And I think Pettigrew is the one that pretty much learns that Frank is selling some doogie, and probably tries to get in on the action, because as we learn in this episode, Pettigrew is itching to get back into the doogie selling, because I don't think their finances have dried up since they're no longer involved in that. And Chance really accepts that they ain't in that game. But we hear from Pettigrew's like, yo, we could be selling this and whatnot. So I think Pettigrew's going to team up with Frank and sell some of that doogie that Frank kept on the side. I think my spidey senses tell me that's what's going to happen with that.